Today, Honda announced the hotly anticipated production version of their CB1000F Retro, and it looks, to me, pretty awesome. So in this video, we'll go through all of the key details with the complete specs, the price, which I think is really rather good, and also when it'll be available to buy in dealers. Now, the first thing to point out is that this bike is heavily based upon the already excellent CB1000 Hornet Naked, but it looks to capitalize on the current demand for old school looking bikes with a styling package that they'll hope will make it appeal to a slightly different customer. There are some technical tweaks as well though, perhaps the biggest of which would be the engine, with the same 1000cc inline 4 as the Hornet derived from the 2017 Fireblade, but in this bike tuned for more low-end and mid-range, where they expect customers to spend more time when riding it. So instead of the revvy 150 horsepower up at 11,000 RPM in the Hornet, the CB1000F makes a lower peak of 122 horsepower, although it is achieved a couple of thousand RPM lower at 9,000. This is a result of that beefier mid-range, partially signified with a new peak torque figure. It's 103 Nm made 1,000 RPM lower than the Hornet, which does 104 at 9,000 RPM. Now look, unfortunately there's no full dyno chart in the press kit, but I guess this is only part of the picture, with Honda saying there's a much improved throttle response under 6,000 RPM. Changes they've made to achieve this include different cam profiles and also a longer intake funnel. And they also say they've given it different funnel inlet lengths for the left and right two cylinders to give it a pulsating induction sound, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing in the flesh. Now, another change they've made versus the Hornet to make this retro bike a touch more usable is the gearbox, which is shorter in both first and second gear. They say this will make it feel a little more snappy under acceleration, especially combined with that extra low-end response, although they do say from third gear and above, they've actually lengthened the gears. This means at around 60 miles per hour, it will be 300 RPM lower in the revs, and so that should give it a slightly more relaxed feel when cruising along. Like the Hornet, it gets a slip assist clutch, which gives it a lighter feel at the lever, but also prevents rear wheel skipping under heavy downshifts. Now, the CB1000 Hornet, I think it's fair to say, is widely regarded as exceptional value for money at just over $9,000. But one of the few criticisms I've seen in a few reviews is the lack of a 6-axis IMU or inertial measurement unit, which would make the rider aids like traction control and ABS corner insensitive. Some riders who perhaps push the bike a little harder say the intervention from these rider aids is a little too basic for perhaps what the bike is capable of doing. But look, it'll be music to the ears of some of you that the CB1000F, does actually come with an IMU. Perhaps Honda's thinking is that this one will be more likely to be used as an all-rounder, less so as an exclusive sporty weekend rocket, and so maybe it's more likely to do a soggy commute, for example, where more nuanced rider aids could be a valuable safety net. Like the Hornet though, it gets a nice selection of riding modes with standard, sport and rain, along with a couple of user slots for your own personal combination of settings. Within that, you can choose from 3 levels of power, 3 levels of engine braking, and also 3 levels of HSTC, which is Honda's selectable torque control, and that's basically their fancy name for traction control, which you can also completely switch off. But onto the chassis, which starts with the same steel diamond twin spar frame as the Hornet, although there is a substantially different subframe for this particular model, which they say opens up more room for 2-up riding. On top of that, there's the option to fit a center stand here, which isn't the case for the Hornet, or at least I can't find one on the configurator anyway. But otherwise, you'll find the exact same dimensions. The rake, the trail, the wheelbase all match the CB1000 Hornet, although there are a couple of extra kilograms of weight, perhaps with the extra styling bits and that longer tail section. The similarity means you get a lot of the same componentry too, so a Showa 41mm upside down fork, which is fully adjustable, a Showa ProLink shock, which is also fully adjustable, although you do get a new specific linkage for the CB1000F, which they say does give it a touch more comfort at lower speeds, as well as better stability at higher speeds. Up front, we've got a pair of 4-pot Nissin radially mounted calipers on 310mm discs. Again, same as the Hornet, although they do say they've revised the brake hose expansion rates to create what they call a reassuring brake performance and feel. Plus, of course, you've now got that IMU for the cornering ABS, and then out back, a 240mm disc with a single pot Nissin caliper. Those hoping for an SP version, like the CB1000 Hornet, which gets an Olin shock, Brembo brakes, a standard quick shifter, and an exhaust control valve, might be a little disappointed, but in my eyes, the level of spec is absolutely appropriate for the F's more laid-back vibe. Wheels are cast aluminium with a 5Y-spoke design, which they say were influenced by those of the current gen Fireblade. Now onto the riding position, and much like the engine, it has been chilled out a bit for a more relaxed ride. The seat height now comes in at 795mm, for example, which should be nice and easy to manage, and that's 14mm less than the 809 of the Hornet. You can actually see a real difference when you flick between the two, and also that longer and lower subframe will look very appealing to shorter passengers, I'm sure. But back to the rider, and to match that lower seat height, they've also moved the bars back and up, and the foot pegs go forward and down, so the rider is rotated back into a more relaxed, upright and forward-looking position. We can't let this bike pass by though without a bit of a word on the styling, because I think it's going to be the standout selling point for this CB1000F. Now, the first concept of this bike, which was shown a few years back, definitely captured the essence of the original CB750F of the 80s, and while there have been a few concessions here and there to the budgetary and homologation constraints of a proper production bike, well, you've got to say overall they've done a very good job of keeping it in very much the same ballpark as that original beautiful concept bike. Now, perhaps some will bemoan the TFT dash as not truly authentically retro, but I think if you look at this bike overall, it really is a blend of new and old, and so perhaps can be forgiven for a few modernities still on show. As for the colours, well, you've got silver with grey stripes, silver with blue stripes, which is my personal pick, although it was run close by the black version with the red pinstripes, which I also think looks pretty flippin' nice. There is, of course, the opportunity to tailor the look to your personal taste with a selection of accessories straight from Honda themselves. We've got a comfort seat, engine guard, headlight cowl, the centre stand, a radiator guard, there's some luggage, heated grips and a quick shifter. Although it is worth adding that some stuff, the connectivity features, a USB-C port, and their emergency stop lights do come fitted as standard. So that, my friends, brings us nicely onto the price, and I've got to say I think it looks pretty good. With bikes in dealers from February 2026. They're saying £10,599 in the UK, which is admittedly about 1,500 quid more than the standard CB1000 Hornet, but that is almost always the case, that you pay more for a retro-style version of a naked motorcycle. What I think is more of an appropriate reference point would be the rest of the bikes on the retro litre-ish performance market. The XSR 900 from Yamaha, for example, a styled-up version of their MT-09, is £11,004. The Kawasaki Z900RS, built upon their Z900 naked, is £11,699. Then, if you look at the European brands like Triumph with their Speed Twin 1200, that's over 12.5 grand, and the BMW R1290 starts at almost 14.5 grand. So I think by comparison, the CB1000F looks like great value for money, and looking at the specs on paper, well, it should be able to go toe-to-toe with most of them in terms of how it rides. So overall, I reckon Honda have done a decent job on this one, and any compromises such as not getting its own dedicated dual clocks are massively softened by the most budget-friendly price in the segment. This one is firmly at the top of the list of 2026 bikes to review, but in the meantime, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. I'll also leave my review of the Hornet SP on the screen now, so you can give that a watch in the meantime. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next video.